The steak on my plate was still sizzling when my world fell apart. It was a perfect medium-rare ribeye sitting on a heavy plate at an expensive steakhouse in Chicago. I had my fork halfway to my mouth when Sean Miller stood up. Sean, at 42 years old, was the newly appointed VP of Operations at Apex Logics. He was the kind of guy who wore tight tailored suits and spoke in a loud, performative tone. He raised his glass, looking around the long table. We had just closed the biggest logistics contract of the quarter, a major shipping deal with an agricultural supplier. Everyone at the table was smiling, laughing, clinking their glasses. "We did it," Sean announced, his voice booming. "The team has pushed hard to make this happen." "Well, most of the team." He paused, a slow, calculated grin spreading across his face. "But as we move forward, we have to face some hard truths. Sometimes, dead weight slows down the machine. If you want a train to go faster, you have to cut the heavy cars." The laughter around the table died, replaced by an uneasy silence. Then Sean turned his gaze directly onto me. "Alan Vance," he said, "is no longer with Apex Logics, effective immediately." The silence that followed was heavy. I sat frozen, my fork suspended in the air. I had spent 12 years at Apex Logics. I was 58 years old, and I had designed the entire routing architecture that made this massive contract possible. My code was the engine of this company. Yet here I was, discarded like a piece of broken office equipment in front of the clients we had just won. I looked down the table. Maya Patel, my lead developer, looked away, her face flushing. Owen Fletcher, the head of QA, kept his eyes glued to his glass. Even Toby, the 23-year-old intern I had spent 3 months mentoring, stared at his hands. The clients themselves looked deeply uncomfortable. "Let us toast to acceleration, not friction," Sean finished. I set my fork down. It made a loud clack. I stood up slowly, keeping my back straight. I did not say a word. I did not look at Sean. I just turned and walked toward the exit. As I stepped past the adjacent booth, an older man with silver hair and a sharp navy suit caught my eye. He was dining alone. As I passed, he reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a heavy paper card, and slid it across the wooden partition separating our tables. "Dead weight does not build systems like yours," the man said in a quiet voice. "My office, 9 a.m. I looked down at the card, Howard Briggs, Vanguard Holdings. I did not know who he was, but the weight of the card felt real. I slipped it into my pocket, nodded once, and walked out into the cold Chicago night. I spent the entire night sitting on the edge of my bed. My phone did not stop buzzing. Messages poured in from colleagues. Most of them were fake, written by people who were just smelling blood. Paul, an old manager who had sat next to me for 5 years, texted, "Tough break, Alan. Let me know if you want to grab coffee." Another manager wrote, "When one door closes, a window opens." I knew they did not care. They were just relieved it was not them. Half of them had probably nodded when Sean called me dead weight. I ignored every single notification. At 8:45 the next morning, I walked through the glass doors of the Vanguard Holdings building. The lobby was quiet, smelling of polished stone. When I told the receptionist my name and that I had an appointment with Howard Briggs, she sat up straight. She pointed toward the private elevator. 17th floor, she said. "Mr. Briggs is expecting you." When the elevator doors opened, I was guided down a quiet hallway lined with dark wood. Howard Briggs, a 63-year-old self-made billionaire, was sitting behind a massive desk. He did not shake my hand. He did not offer me coffee. Instead, he reached into a drawer and dropped a thick, weathered manila folder onto the desk between us. I opened it. Inside were my original handwritten diagrams, routing math and data flows from 2021. There was even a brown circular ring on one page from a coffee cup during an all-night coding shift 5 years ago. "Apex Logics watered this down," Howard said, leaning forward. "They turned your math into a cheap marketing slide to show investors. But the core logic is brilliant. It is yours, Alan." I stared at the coffee-stained paper. "How did you get this?" I asked. "I buy distressed tech and high-value IP," Howard replied. "I know when someone is sitting on a goldmine they do not understand. I want you to rebuild this system from scratch, exactly the way you wanted to build it before they cut your budget. Total autonomy. Fully funded." I looked up. "What is the catch?" "You go dark," Howard said. "No social media, no public code repositories. We set up a dummy corporation called Frostbite Systems LLC. On paper, you do not exist. Vanguard will fund the LLC quietly. We do not announce anything until the system is ready. Can you live in the dark for a while?" I looked at the diagrams of the routing engine. It was everything I had built. "I will need 2 days," I said. "You have 60 seconds. Howard replied, checking his watch. I reached for the pen. "I will do it." We operated out of a dusty third-floor space above a dental office in Oak Park. The windows were blacked out with heavy plastic sheets, and the air smelled of stale coffee and industrial carpet cleaner. Howard Briggs had wired the initial funding of $5,000 to our dummy account under Frostbite Systems LLC, but we did not spend it on high-end furniture or sleek offices. We spent it on raw compute power, hardwired servers, and clean security. I brought Maya Patel in first. She had designed the core routing logic engine with me at Apex Logics back when we still believed the company valued engineering. They had laid her off 3 months before me during a corporate restructuring. When I called her, she did not even ask about the salary. She just asked if I still had the original math diagrams. Better, I told her. I have the funding to build it right. She quit her contract job that afternoon and showed up at the Oak Park office at 7 a.m. the next morning. She immediately set up her dual monitors and began sketching the database relationships on a small whiteboard. Owen Fletcher came next. Owen was a QA engineer who was absolutely ruthless with code. He had left Apex Logics after a junior product manager told him that automated testing was not a value-generating position. When I reached out, his laugh was short and sharp. "I want in," Owen said. "What name do I use on the commits?" "An alias," I told him. "We are not using our real names." Chloe Jenkins was the last to join. She was a DevOps genius who could deploy a secure pipeline in her sleep. Apex Logics had frozen her out after she raised concerns about management falsifying system uptime reports to clients. She showed up to our office wearing a faded black hoodie, holding a box of cheap burner phones and a hard drive. "This time," Chloe said, placing the phones on the table, "we ghost them completely. No cloud sync, no public hosting." For the next 5 months, we worked like ghosts. We did not use our personal laptops. We only used clean machines that never connected to the public internet without passing through 3 layers of encrypted proxies. There was no Slack, no Zoom, and no shared Google Drive. We used an open-source, peer-to-peer encrypted chat tool running on a local network. Every commit was signed with an alias. Every system log was wiped automatically at midnight. Every Friday night, I printed the core repository updates on paper, locked them in a heavy steel drawer, and turned a physical brass key. We worked in silence, driven by a quiet intensity. Sometimes we would go 4 hours without anyone saying a word, the only sound being the tapping of keys and the hum of the cooling fans. We ate cheap takeout food at our desks, sharing stories about the ridiculous management decisions at our old company. It was a bonding experience built on shared betrayal and mutual respect. The physical toll was real. I was 58 years old, and sleeping till caught in a windowless room was not easy on my back. But every time I saw the routing engine run, the pain vanished. At Apex Logics, their system took 10 minutes to calculate a full cross-state fleet optimization. If a storm hit Kansas, the dispatcher had to manually override the routes, causing hours of delays. Our new platform, which we named ColdLock, did it in less than 40 seconds. It did not just react to delays, it predicted them by analyzing live weather data and highway sensor APIs. Every time a test suite passed, Owen would look up, nod once, and return to his keyboard. Maya sat in the corner, her fingers flying across the keys as she refined the multi-state database schemas. We were rebuilding my life work, but this time, there were no corporate managers breathing down our necks, demanding we cut corners to meet quarterly sales presentations. Every 3 weeks, Howard Briggs would call my burner phone. The calls never lasted more than 5 minutes. He never asked about my feelings. He only asked for the performance metrics. "The latency is down to 12 milliseconds, I told him during one call. "Good," Howard said, his voice flat. "But stay invisible. Do not get greedy for attention. The first time Apex Logics hears about us, it must be too late for them to react. We are building a loaded weapon, Alan. You do not show the target the gun before you pull the trigger." He was right. We were not looking for tech blog articles or funding announcements. We were building something designed to displace them entirely. I spent my nights sitting in the corner of the dark room, watching the green lines of data move across the monitors. The simulation showed 500 virtual trucks navigating a massive blizzard in the Midwest. While the Apex Logic system would have frozen them in place, ColdLock rerouted them through clear local lanes, saving 18% in fuel costs and keeping the cargo at exactly -5 degrees Fahrenheit. It was beautiful, it was clean, fast, and deadly efficient, and it belonged entirely to us. I would look at the screen, run my hand over the scarred wood of the desk, and feel a deep sense of calm. The public humiliation at the steakhouse felt miles away now. Sean Miller thought he had thrown away dead weight. In reality, he had just cut the anchor that was keeping his sinking ship afloat. At 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday, my burner phone buzzed twice. It was an encrypted text from Chloe. "Are you awake? Check Midline right now." I sat up instantly, throwing off the blanket. Midline Transit was a mid-tier freight carrier based in Kansas City. They were not huge enough to draw industry headlines, but they were a solid old-school fleet with 200 trucks. They had been loyal Apex Logics clients for 6 years. I booted up my machine and ran a diagnostic trace on the regional data lines. The numbers did not lie. Midline had quietly switched their primary routing platform 3 days ago. There was no public announcement, and their public portal did not list a vendor. But when I analyzed their load optimization fingerprints, I saw our work. It was the distinct signature of ColdLock. The routes were recalculating every 12 minutes, the error margins were below 2%, and our proprietary thermal anomaly tags were active. I sent a ping to the team chat. Maya responded within minutes, confirming the database pathing was ours. Owen added, "They are not even masking it. The system is moving their trucks perfectly." Chloe wrote, "They wanted it to leak to other carriers. The word is spreading." By sunrise, our basic contact form had received inquiries from 5 regional haulers. They were not sending official corporate emails. They were sending vague, curious messages from private addresses, trying to see if we were real or just vaporware. One operations manager from a regional logistics company called my burner phone directly. He spoke in a low voice, almost like he was buying contraband. "Your system Frostbite, right? We want to see a software demo," he said. "We do not do demos," I replied. "We run live proofs. Give us 10 of your worst routes for 1 week. If we do not cut your fuel costs by at least 15%, we will pay for your fuel." That was how the soft entry started. We did not run advertising campaigns. We just quietly took over the worst lanes in 6 Midwestern states. The results were immediate and stable. Drivers in trucking forums began whispering about a ghost platform that kept them moving even when winter storms shut down the major highways in Iowa. Meanwhile, back at Apex Logics, the wheels were falling off the wagon. Sean Miller had tried to upgrade their old system to what he called Apex Route 2.0. But because he had discarded my original architecture team, his developers did not understand how the database is connected. They had stripped out key optimization features to save on server costs. As a result, their APIs began breaking, their tracking systems lagged by hours, and their customer portal began crashing daily. The panic was starting to show. They had a massive breakdown with their temperature-controlled lanes in Indiana, causing $200,000 worth of dairy products to spoil because the system failed to alert the dispatchers when the cooling units shut down. The dairy company threatened to sue, and the local news picked up the story, highlighting the food waste. Drivers were venting their frustration on public forums, posting screenshots of frozen screens and routing loops that sent them in circles. Customer service lines were backed up with over 400 unresolved tickets, and dispatchers were calling in sick just to avoid the angry phone calls from clients. On Thursday afternoon, Owen sent me a screen recording of an internal Apex Logics all-hands video call. In the video, Sean Miller was standing in front of a whiteboard, his face bright red, waving a black marker. "This is not a system failure," Sean yelled, his voice cracking. "It is a temporary miscommunication. The legacy code was poorly documented by the developers who left last year. Some junior interns made unauthorized changes to the routing logic without management oversight. We are fixing it." Sean was blaming 20-year-old interns for his own technical incompetence. Maya leaned over my shoulder to watch the video. She laughed, a quiet, cold sound. "He still thinks this is a minor bug," she said. "He has no idea we are already running circles around them in the real world." I did not smile. "Not yet," I said. "We need to keep our heads down." I sat back in my chair, staring at the glowing screens. The memory of Sean Miller raising his glass at the steakhouse flashed through my mind, but it did not make me angry anymore. It only made me focus on the code. That night, my phone rang again. It was Howard Briggs. "The soft entry worked," Howard said. "Our virtual server loads are running clean. Are you ready when things get loud?" I took a deep breath. "Yes," I said, "we are ready." He hung up without saying goodbye. By the end of the week, the live data report showed that ColdLock was outperforming Apex Logics by 35% across all core benchmarks. Our fuel savings were higher, our route disruptions were almost zero, and our temperature-controlled cargo monitoring was flawless. We did not send out press releases. We did not write LinkedIn posts. We just sat in our dark Oak Park office, watching the live maps light up with green routing lines as we quietly took over their market share. The silence from Apex Logics was deafening, but I knew it would not last. They were bleeding clients, and sooner or later, Sean Miller would realize who was holding the knife. The cease and desist letter arrived at my desk on a Thursday morning via certified mail. It was a heavy white envelope with the Apex Logics logo printed in bold silver at the top. The letter was 6 pages long, written in dense legalese, and filled with threatening terms: intellectual property theft, misappropriation of trade secrets, and systemic sabotage. They demanded that Frostbite Systems immediately cease operations, shut down our servers, and hand over our entire codebase within 48 hours. I did not panic. I did not throw things. I simply folded the letter, placed it in my leather briefcase, and drove directly to the Vanguard Holdings offices to meet with Howard Briggs. When I arrived, Howard was already waiting in a private conference room with Diana Cole, a 45-year-old corporate attorney who specialized in high-stakes technology disputes. Diana was a quiet, sharp woman with steel-gray eyes. She did not waste time with pleasantries. She pulled the letter from my hands, laid it flat on the table, and began scanning the paragraphs. "They are bluffing," Diana said after 5 minutes, a cold smile appearing on her face. "They are bleeding clients, and they are desperate. They want to scare you into giving them the code because they cannot build it themselves." For the next 2 hours, we built a comprehensive legal counterstrike. I pulled up my old encrypted hard drive, showing Diana my original development logs. We went through the coffee-stained paper diagrams from 2021, my old Slack conversation exports, and the local commit logs that predated my firing. Under federal law, specifically 17 U.S.C. 106, the exclusive rights to a copyrighted work remain with the creator unless there is a clear written agreement transferring those rights, Diana explained. Your original contract with Apex Logics had a specific clause stating that any intellectual property developed outside of official project scopes remained your personal property unless they executed a formal buyout. They never did. They simply took your raw prototype, wrapped a cheap interface around it, and called it their own. This is a clear case of fraudulent attribution, and by accusing you of theft, they are exposing themselves to massive liabilities. If they present these falsified claims in court, they will be committing perjury. Furthermore, by falsifying temperature logs on cold-chain pharmaceutical cargo to hide their system failures, they are committing insurance fraud. Insurance companies will deny their coverage, leaving them liable for millions of dollars in spoiled goods by 9 a.m. The following morning, Diana had drafted a 24-page response. It was not a plea, it was a legal hammer. It contained high-resolution scans of my 2021 diagrams, complete with dates, times, and coffee stains. It included screenshots of Sean Miller telling me in an email that my routing system was a personal project that Apex Logics would not fund. We did not just send the response to their legal department. We filed a formal counter-complaint in the Delaware Chancery Court, accusing Apex Logics of fraudulent attribution, breach of fiduciary duty, and illegal use of personal property. Let them try to explain this to their shareholders, Howard said, leaning back in his chair. If their stock drops any further, the board will have to turn on Sean to save themselves. 2 days later, my burner phone received an encrypted message from a secure email address. The sender identified herself as Brenda Shaw, an investigative journalist at TechCrunch. I have copies of internal Apex Logics communications, Brenda wrote. I have Slack logs showing Sean Miller and their executive board knew their routing system was failing months ago, but they falsified their metrics to prevent a stock sell-off. I know you are the architect they fired. Will you speak to me on the record? I consulted with Howard and Diana. We agreed to a secure end-to-end encrypted video meeting. I did not show my face, but I shared my screen. I showed Brenda the direct comparison between my original code architecture and the broken systems Apex Logics was currently running. The differences were clear. My system was a clean, multi-state routing engine. Theirs was a corrupted copy that had been gutted to save on server costs, which was why their cold chain temperature readings were failing. I gave her one official quote. They stripped out the core safety logic to save on computing power, and then they blamed their own interns when the system collapsed. Brenda's expose dropped on Monday morning. The headline was massive, buried code. How Apex Logics erased the architect behind their routing network. The article went viral within hours. It included screenshots of the emails Sean Miller had sent me, the timeline of my firing at the steakhouse, and the 2021 diagrams proving I owned the core logic. By noon, the story was trending on Twitter and LinkedIn. By 2 p.m., the Apex Logics stock price had plummeted by 22%, wiping out millions of dollars in market value. Major institutional investors began demanding explanations, and 2 board members resigned before the market closed. Sean Miller was forced to issue a dry, defensive statement claiming that Apex Logics was launching an internal review and took all compliance matters seriously. But the damage was done. The corporate facade had cracked, and the industry could finally see the truth. By Monday evening, 3 major insurance companies had already contacted Diana, requesting access to our data logs to investigate the falsified cold chain reports. We had not fired a single shot in public, but the walls were closing in on the people who had called me dead weight. The collapse of Apex Logics happened faster than anyone expected. Within 1 week of Brenda Shaw's article, their customer support lines were flooded with complaints from angry shipping managers. Their system failures in Indianapolis and Chicago had frozen entire corridors of temperature-controlled freight. PharmRx, the largest pharmaceutical shipper in the country, announced they were terminating their 18 mils and thousand contract with Apex Logics. They cited a total failure of cold chain integrity as the reason. The next day, PharmRx quietly signed a long-term contract with Frostbite Systems LLC. They did not need a demo. They had already seen our live data proofs. With their stock price down by 45% and their major contracts gone, the Apex Logics board of directors took immediate action. Keith Holloway, a senior board member, called an emergency meeting. Sean Miller was terminated from his position as VP of Operations. He was escorted out of the building by security guards with no severance pay and a potential shareholder lawsuit waiting for him. Vanguard Holdings stepped in shortly after. Howard Briggs did not buy Apex Logics, but he bought their remaining regional physical assets at a deep discount. He then officially folded Frostbite Systems into a new corporation, Vanguard Crest Logistics. I was no longer a ghost. The launch day was held in a high-floor conference room in Midtown Manhattan. The room was filled with glass walls, private equity investors, and logistics executives. There was no loud music or flashy banners. It was a gathering of serious industry leaders. I stood near the back, wearing a clean suit. The lanyard around my neck had a white badge that read, Alan Vance, Chief Technology Officer. Howard Briggs took the stage first. He kept his presentation short. He showed a simple graphic comparing the server efficiency and cost savings of our routing platform against the industry standard. The numbers spoke for themselves. Then he motioned toward me. "We did not build this platform with marketing campaigns," Howard said. "We built it with superior engineering. Meet the architect behind the system, Alan Vance." I walked up to the microphone. The room was quiet. I looked out at the faces of the investors, the journalists, and the shipping executives. I thought about the steakhouse in Chicago. I thought about Sean Miller calling me dead weight while my former team members looked away in silence. "They told me I was dead weight," I said, my voice steady. "They told me my ideas were obsolete. I did not spend my time arguing with them. I did not make speeches. I simply built the system they swore could not be built." In logistics, as in life, quality cannot be buried for long. The data always wins. There was no wild cheering or loud applause. Instead, there was a deep, respectful silence, followed by polite, firm nodding from the executives in the front row. That was exactly what I wanted. I did not need the fake applause of a corporate dinner. I needed the respect of people who understood the complexity of the math. I stepped back, nodded once to Howard, and walked off the stage. In the days that followed, my LinkedIn inbox was flooded with connection requests and messages from former Apex Logics colleagues. Even Paul, the operations manager, and some senior developers who had sat in silence at the steakhouse reached out, asking if we were hiring at Vanguard Crest. I deleted their messages without replying. I was not interested in hiring people who only supported me when it was convenient. Their silence during my humiliation was a choice, and now they had to live with the consequences of that choice. 4 blocks away, in a cramped, dark corner of a public co-working space, Sean Miller was watching the live stream of the launch on a beat-up iPad. The battery icon in the corner was flashing red at 6%. The public Wi-Fi connection was lagging, causing the video to buffer every few seconds. But he still saw it. He saw my face on the screen. He saw the title CTO next to my name. He saw the Vanguard Crest logo. And he watched the real-time stock ticker showing Apex Logics trading at near-zero values. He sat there, his head in his hands, staring at the screen as the battery finally died and the screen went black. He had tried to steal my legacy, and in the process he had destroyed his own. I returned to Chicago the next day. The Oak Park office was gone, replaced by a modern development facility, but the team remained the same. Maya, Owen, and Chloe were all there, sitting at their new desks, writing code and running tests. Owen was already analyzing the new route telemetry on his monitors, while Chloe verified our database security parameters. We did not celebrate with champagne, we simply went back to work. There were new routes to optimize, new states to onboard, and new servers to secure. I sat in my new corner office, looking at the massive dashboard on the wall. The green routing lines were moving smoothly across 14 states now. The hum of the servers in the background was quiet and rhythmic, the same hum I had heard in the dark dental building. The weight of the betrayal was gone, the shadows were gone. Now there was only the cold data, the clean code, and my name etched exactly where it belonged. It was a solid ending to a long journey.